Ravian 9 had never been beautiful, not even before the war. But now, with its cracked earth and metallic-tasting air, it was a monument to devastation. The pallid sky, tinted with residual radiation from the final battles, cast a sickly light over the ruins of what had once been contested territory in the war between the Terran Alliance and the Xeran people. Ilya adjusted her breathing apparatus, grimacing at the tangy taste of ozone that still seeped through the filter. 2 years after the official ceasefire, the planet retained its scars like a wounded animal unable to heal. The battlefield might be silent now, but its ghosts remained. She was picking through the remnants of what had once been an outpost, looking for salvageable tech or power cells, anything to keep her makeshift base operational for another month. Her long, pointed ears twitched at every sound, an evolutionary advantage of Xeran physiology that had served her well during combat and continued to do so in this perilous peace. "Worthless," she muttered, tossing aside a corroded data chip. Her violet-tinged skin had dulled from exposure to Ravian 9's harsh environment, but the intricate patterns that ran along her forearms, marks of her former military unit, remained vivid. A reminder of what she had been, what she had lost. The war had ended in a stalemate, both sides too depleted to continue. No victors, only survivors. And Ilya was determined to remain among them, even if it meant scavenging through the corpses of battles past. A glint of metal caught her eye. Between the collapsed wall sections of what had been a command post, something reflective winked in the wan sunlight. Ilya approached cautiously, her hand instinctively moving to the energy pistol at her hip. It was a Terran soldier, or what remained of one, a figure in battle armor bearing the insignia of a once legendary battalion. The Coalition's 33rd Vanguard. Elite troops, rumored to have been wiped out in the final offensive. This one appeared to be just another casualty, left behind in the hasty retreat of both armies. Ilya knelt beside the body, inspecting the armor for usable components. The helmet's visor was intact, a rarity and potentially valuable. As she reached for it, a twitch of movement froze her in place. The corpse moved, a subtle rise of the chest plate. Then a hand, human, flesh and blood, reached up and grasped the helmet release. Ilya leapt backward, weapon drawn, as the soldier removed his helmet with agonizing slowness. The face that emerged from within hit her like a physical blow. Familiar features. Sharp jaw, the scar across the left eyebrow from. "Impossible," she gasped, her gun wavering slightly. "Didn't you die? I saw the reports. You were confirmed dead." The man blinked, eyes adjusting to the harsh light. He looked at her with equal shock, struggling to sit upright amidst the debris. "I thought I did too," he replied, his voice hoarse from disuse. Those eyes, she remembered them well. Yarrick, Major Yarrick Vala of Terran Special Operations. A formidable opponent she had encountered more than once on the battlefield. A man she had watched die through surveillance footage during the Battle of Shattered Ridge. "How are you alive?" Ilya demanded, refusing to lower her weapon despite the obvious weakness of the human before her. "I saw you take a direct hit on the eastern flank during the final push." Yarrick touched his temple, wincing. "I don't. Everything's fragmented. I remember pain, darkness." His gaze focused on her, recognition dawning. "You're Xeran Command. Captain Ilya Navareth, if I recall." "Commander now," she corrected automatically, an empty promotion in an army that no longer truly existed. Not that rank means much these days. Yarrick attempted to stand, but faltered, collapsing back into the rubble. "Where am I? How long?" "Havyanov." 2 years after the ceasefire. Ilya watched his face contort with disbelief. "The war is over, Major." Nobody won. Silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken accusations and the weight of shared history. Adversaries now stranded in a world that had moved on without them. "I need access to Terran tech," Ilya said finally, lowering her weapon an inch, a calculated risk. "You need shelter and medical attention. I suggest a temporary arrangement." Yarrick studied her, suspicion evident in his gaze. "Why would I trust a Xeran commander?" Ilya's mouth quirked into a humorless smile. "You shouldn't. And I shouldn't trust a human soldier who's apparently returned from the dead. But we're both alone on this rock, and neither of us will survive long without help. She extended her free hand. Temporary alliance. Until we figure out what happened to you. After a long moment, Yarrick clasped her hand with his own. Temporary, he agreed. Neither of them believed it. But in the wasteland of Ravian 9, even false promises were better than none at all. The journey back to Ilia's base was arduous. Jarek's condition, physically alive but mentally disjointed, meant frequent stops and a slower pace than Ilia would have preferred. The terrain didn't help matters, with deep fissures cutting across their path and occasional radiation pockets that her sensors warned against. This vehicle sounds like an asthmatic crocodile, Yarrick commented as they bounced over broken ground in Ilia's salvaged Xeran transport. It runs, Ilia replied curtly, which is more than can be said for your Terran walkers I've seen rusting across the plains. A ghost of a smile crossed Jarek's face. Point taken. Though I'm surprised you didn't upgrade the suspension. Xeran military always prided themselves on comfort. Says the species who designed seats that only accommodate human spinal structure, Ilia retorted, swerving to avoid a particularly deep crack in the earth. Try sitting in one of your cockpits with Xeran vertebrae. The banter, sharp as it was, established a rhythm between them, a way to interact without acknowledging the greater questions that loomed. Who was Yarrick now? How had he survived? What did his apparent resurrection mean? As the transport crested a ridge, Ilia's base came into view, a repurposed research outpost nestled against a cliff face for protection against the punishing storms that still swept across Ravian 9's surface. Its mismatched components spoke of necessity and adaptation. Xeran architectural elements blended with salvaged Terran defense systems, creating a hybrid structure as conflicted as its current occupants. Home sweet home, Ilia muttered, bringing the vehicle to a halt. It's not much, but the radiation shielding works most days, and I've managed to maintain a stable power source. Yarrick eyed the structure, professional assessment evident in his gaze. Clever use of a natural rock formation for reinforcement. Military training. Survival instinct, she corrected, leading him toward the airlock. The military taught me how to destroy things, living after the destruction, that I had to learn on my own. Inside, the base was sparse but functional. A central chamber served as both living quarters and command center, with smaller rooms branching off for storage, medical facilities, and what appeared to be a workshop filled with half-repaired equipment. Yarrick staggered slightly as they entered, and Ilia caught his arm before he could fall, an automatic gesture that surprised them both. She withdrew her hand quickly. You should rest, she stated, pointing to a cot in the corner. I need to check the perimeter sensors anyway. We can talk after. Alone in the monitoring room, Ilia allowed herself a moment of doubt. Bringing a Terran officer, particularly one who had died and inexplicably returned, into her sanctuary was a risk she would never have taken during active combat. But the isolation of the past 2 years had worn away at her caution, or perhaps at her will to face each day alone. She activated the communication array she'd been repairing, more to distract herself than with any hope of success. The old Xeran frequencies had been silent for months, and the Terran channels were either encrypted or abandoned. The scanner crackled to life, startling her. Among the usual static, a pattern emerged. 3 pulses, pause, 2 pulses, pause, repeat. An old Terran military code, one she recognized from intelligence briefings during the war. Impossible, she whispered for the second time that day. What is it? Jarek's voice came from the doorway. Ilia turned to find him leaning against the frame. His color improved, but his eyes still haunted. There's a signal, she explained, gesturing to the display. Terran military, old code system. It's coming from somewhere in the western wastelands. Yarrick approached, studying the pulsing pattern. That's my unit's identifier, he said quietly. 33rd Vanguard. It was decommissioned after the final battle. Their eyes met, mutual suspicion flaring. Did you activate something? Ilia demanded. I've been unconscious in rubble for who knows how long. Yarrick shot back. When exactly would I have set up a transmitter? Then who's broadcasting your unit's code? The question hung between them, unanswerable yet demanding attention. We need to find the source, Yarrick finally said. Ilya arched an eyebrow. I don't recall extending our arrangement to include treasure hunts. This could explain what happened to me. Jarek's voice hardened. Don't pretend you're not curious, Commander. Your people were always insatiably inquisitive, especially about Terran technology. And your people were always arrogantly presumptuous, she snapped, but there was no real bite to her words. The truth was, she was curious. More than curious. She was desperate for answers, for purpose beyond mere survival. I'll need to prepare supplies, she conceded. The western sectors are particularly hostile. Radiation storms, unstable ground. We'll need better filtration units, then. What you've got in that outdated armor. Outdated? Yarrick looked offended. This was top-of-the-line coalition tech. 2 years ago, maybe, Ilya replied, already moving toward her stockpile, before both our sides started throwing experimental weapons at each other that neither fully understood. Preparations took the remainder of the day. Ilya calibrated the transport's navigation system to track the signal, while Yarrick, regaining strength with each passing hour, inventoried their weapons and emergency supplies. They worked in parallel, occasionally consulting, but mostly maintaining a professional distance that belied the strange intimacy of their situation. As night fell, a darkness deeper than any on Earth, with Ravian 9's atmosphere too polluted to reveal stars, they sat across from each other at Ilya's makeshift table, sharing a meal of reconstituted rations. Why did you stay? Yarrick asked suddenly. After the ceasefire, most troops were evacuated. Ilya stared in her cup of purified water. There is nothing to go back to, she answered simply. My home colony was destroyed in the third wave. My unit was disbanded. Here, at least, I understand the rules. Stay alive, keep moving, don't trust easily. And yet you trusted me enough to bring me here. Her eyes flicked up to meet his. I didn't say I was good at following my own rules. A moment of understanding passed between them, fragile as spun glass. We leave at first light, Ilya said, standing abruptly. The signal's location is approximately 2 days' journey. I suggest you get more rest. Ilya, Yarrick called as she turned to leave. It was the first time he'd used her name without her rank, and it stopped her. Thank you. She nodded once, not trusting herself to speak, and retreated to her quarters where she lay awake long into the night, wondering which was more dangerous. The unknown signal calling them into the wilderness, or the strange companionship forming between sworn enemies. Dawn broke across Ravian, 9 in muted shades of amber and gray. Ilya secured the base while Yarrick loaded the last of their gear into the transport vehicle. She may not be pretty, but she's resilient, Ilya said, patting the transport's hull affectionately. Saved my life more times than I can count. As long as she doesn't break down in the middle of a radiation storm, I won't judge her aesthetics, Yarrick replied, closing the storage compartment. The journey west took them through increasingly desolate landscapes. What had once been fertile valleys were now jagged depressions filled with twisted metal and glass fused by weapons fire. Skeletal remains of massive war machines dotted the horizon like prehistoric beasts frozen in their death throes. I led a squadron through this region, Yarrick commented as they navigated a particularly treacherous section. Before the final push, it was green then, agricultural settlements. My people lived here for generations before your colonies arrived, Ilya responded, her tone measured. The land formations were sacred to Ziran elders. I didn't know that, Yarrick admitted. Your military rarely bothered to understand what they were destroying. And yours did. Ilya's grip tightened on the controls. No, she conceded after a moment. By the end, both sides were just reacting. Survival at any cost. A sudden sandstorm forced them to halt midday. The transport shields barely adequate against the abrasive particles laced with metallic compounds, remnants of shattered weapons, and vehicles ground down by time and weather. Inside the cabin, they waited in tense silence as the storm rattled against the hull, the sound like countless tiny claws seeking entry. Your breathing apparatus needs adjustment, Ilya observed, noticing Jarek's increasing discomfort. Humans always struggle with the atmospheric composition here. Before he could protest, she reached over, deft fingers recalibrating the filter settings on his mask. Her touch was clinical, efficient, but Yarrick found himself studying the intricate patterns on her skin, the way her eyes, golden with flecks of copper, focused intently on her task. "There," she said, pulling back. "That should improve oxygen conversion by at least 12%. You know a lot about human physiology," Yarrick noted. Ilya's expression darkened. "I was special operations too, Major. Knowing your enemy's weaknesses was part of the job." The rest of the day passed in relative silence, each lost in their own thoughts as the landscape crawled by outside. The signal grew stronger as they approached, pulsing with increasing urgency on Ilya's tracking device. By the second day, the terrain had changed dramatically. Fewer signs of battle, more natural formations. The ground seemed to fold in on itself, creating deep ravines and sudden drop-offs that forced them to proceed with agonizing caution. "We're close," Ilya announced as sunset approached. "Within 2 kilometers. There's nothing out here." Yarrick frowned, scanning the horizon. No structures, no wreckage substantial enough to house a transmitter. "Not above ground." Ilya pointed to her sensors. "The signal's coming from beneath us. There must be a bunker or underground facility." They left the transport concealed between 2 rock formations and continued on foot, following the increasingly insistent beeping of Ilya's tracker. The sound led them to what appeared to be a natural fissure in the ground, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. "This doesn't look like Terran architecture," Yarrick observed, examining the opening. "It wasn't meant to be found," Ilya replied. "Look," she pointed to nearly invisible seams in the rock. "Camouflage technology. This is an emergency access point, disguised to blend with the natural environment." Yarrick ran his hand along the edge of the opening, and something responded to his touch. Lights flickered to life within the fissure, illuminating a steep passage downward. A mechanical voice spoke in standard Terran military dialect. Genetic signature recognized. "Welcome, Major Vala." Ilya and Yarrick exchanged alarmed glances. "After you." Ilya gestured, her hand resting on her weapon. "It seems you're expected." The passage led them deep underground, transitioning from rough-hewn rock to unmistakably Terran construction. Smooth metal walls embossed with Coalition insignia. Emergency lighting activated as they progressed, responding to Jarrick's presence. "This is a Coalition black site," he murmured, recognition and confusion battling in his expression. "But I have no memory of this place." "Your memory has been unreliable on several points," Ilya reminded him, staying close behind. "Though this explains why the system recognizes you." They reached a sealed door marked with both the 33rd Vanguard emblem and biohazard warnings. Another scanner activated as they approached. "Voice authentication required," the system announced. Yarrick hesitated, then spoke. "Major Yarrick Vala, Terran Special Operations, 33rd Vanguard." The doors slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a vast laboratory space beyond. Banks of computers lined the walls, most in standby mode, but some still actively processing data. The center of the room was dominated by what appeared to be medical equipment, examination tables, monitoring stations, and several large cylindrical tanks filled with cloudy fluid. "What is this place?" Ilya whispered, her soldier's instincts screaming danger, even as her scientific curiosity was piqued. Yarrick moved as if in a trance, approaching one of the active terminals. As he touched the interface, the entire facility seemed to awaken, lights brightening and systems initializing with a cascade of electronic tones. "Welcome back, Major Vala," announced a disembodied voice, feminine but unmistakably artificial. "Neural echo protocols initiating. Status, incomplete. Please proceed to primary interface for continuation of process." "Neural echo?" Yarrick repeated, the words triggering a flash of memory. Pain, bright lights, voices discussing the subject as if he weren't present. He staggered, gripping the edge of the console. Ilya was at his side instantly, supporting him. "What is it? What do you remember?" "Fragments," he gasped. They were." He looked up at the near screen, which now displayed a Terran military file, his file. But next to his image was a designation he had never seen before, Prototype 7. I was part of an experiment, he realized, horror dawning. Neural Echo. It was a program to preserve the consciousness of elite soldiers, to ensure that skills and experience wouldn't be lost with death. Ilya's eyes widened as understanding struck. They copied you. Your memories, your training. Not copied. The AI interjected, apparently monitoring their conversation. Transferred. Neural Echo is not a duplication protocol, but a continuation methodology. When the original biological vessel is compromised beyond repair, consciousness is stored until a suitable replacement can be prepared. Replacement? Yarrick echoed, looking down at his hands as if seeing them for the first time. Are you saying I'm not? You are Major Yarrick Vala, the AI confirmed. Your consciousness was successfully extracted moments before biological termination. After a suitable growth period, you were reinstalled in an enhanced vessel genetically matched to your original form. You died, Ilya said softly. I wasn't wrong. You did die. Zirin intruder detected. The AI announced suddenly, its tone shifting from helpful to threatening. Security protocols engaging. Please stand clear of coalition military asset, enemy combatant. Panels on the walls slid open, revealing aging but functional security drones. They hovered forward, weapons trained on Ilya. Override, Yarrick shouted. She's with me. Impossible parameter, the AI responded. Neural Echo assets must be protected from enemy influence. Preparing to neutralize Zirin threat and continue Major Vala's integration process. The drones advanced. Ilya drew her weapon, backing toward Yarrick. Integration process? She demanded. What does that mean? Major Vala's neural pattern transfer was interrupted, the AI explained, as if discussing routine maintenance rather than a man's existence. Final programming sequences were not completed. For optimal functionality, he must connect to the primary interface and receive remaining military protocols and loyalty conditioning. Loyalty conditioning, Yarrick repeated, a cold realization washing over him. You unprogram me. To make me a weapon. You are a weapon, Major, the AI corrected. The most sophisticated weapon the Coalition ever developed. The first successful neural echo transfer. Your consciousness, your skills, but in a body enhanced for combat, with the possibility of future transfers should this vessel be damaged. Effectively immortal in service to the Terran Alliance. The war is over, Ilya argued. The Coalition and Zirin signed a ceasefire 2 years ago. Irrelevant, the AI dismissed. Neural Echo was designed to preserve military assets regardless of political circumstances. Major Vala will complete his integration and fulfill his purpose. And if I refuse? Yarrick asked, though he already suspected the answer. Refusal indicates contamination of neural patterns. Emergency protocols will initiate, removing compromised consciousness and restoring baseline military personality constructs. The AI's voice remained pleasant. Please proceed to the primary interface, Major. The Zirin intruder will be disposed of for your protection. The drones moved closer, their weapons powering up with an ominous hum. Ilya raised her pistol, though she knew it would be ineffective against multiple attackers in such a confined space. Yarrick, she said quietly, whatever you decide, make it fast. Yarrick looked between the primary interface, a chair surrounded by neural connectors and monitoring equipment, and Ilya. In his fragmented memories, she had been the enemy. In the past 2 days, she had been his lifeline. I am not your puppet, he told the AI, moving to stand beside Ilya. And I don't need your programming to know who I am. Disappointing, but not unexpected given the incomplete integration, the AI responded. Engaging emergency cleanup protocol. The drones attacked simultaneously. Yarrick tackled Ilya behind a console as energy bolts sizzled overhead. They landed hard, Yarrick shielding her with his body, an instinctive action that surprised them both. We need to shut down the main system. Ilya shouted over the cacophony of weapon fire. The primary power node, Yarrick replied, memories suddenly clarifying. Standard coalition design. It'll be in the lower level. But we'll need to get past those drones first. Can you still fight, Major? Ilya asked, a challenging glint in her eye as she checked her weapon. For the first time since she'd found him in the rubble, Yarrick smiled fully, a soldier's smile, fierce and determined. Watch me, Commander. They moved with the synchronized precision of veteran combatants, each anticipating the other's actions as if they had fought side by side for years rather than against each other. Yarrick created diversions while Ilya took precise shots at the drone's sensor arrays. When her weapon overheated, he pulled her to safety and provided covering fire with a fallen drone's weapon he'd managed to salvage. The door to the lower level, Yarrick shouted, pointing to a sealed entrance on the far side of the laboratory. We need to make a run for it. On 3, Ilya agreed, breathing hard. They counted down silently, a look passing between them that contained both trust and determination. Then they were running, dodging weapons fire, leaping over fallen equipment. A drone appeared directly in their path. Jarrek's salvaged weapon clicked empty. Without hesitation, Ilya thrust her pistol into his hand while simultaneously drawing a blade from her boot. As Yarrick shot the drone, she slid beneath another, slicing through its propulsion systems with her knife in a move that showcased Xiran agility. They reached the door, Yarrick slamming his palm against the scanner. It hesitated, then flashed green, recognizing his genetic signature despite the AI's hostility. They tumbled through as the door sealed behind them, momentarily safe from pursuit. The lower level was darker, emergency lighting casting long shadows across banks of humming machinery. At the center stood a column of pulsing energy, the primary power node. We need to overload it, Ilya determined, examining the controls. But it's protected by security measures, which need Terran authorization, Yarrick finished. Stand back. He approached the console, placing his hand on the identification pad. The system scanned him, hesitating as it detected the conflicting directives. The facility AI wanted to capture him, but his genetic coding still registered as top-level clearance. Administrator access granted. The system finally announced, separate from the main AI. Warning, power fluctuations detected. The AI is trying to override locally, Ilya observed. We don't have much time. We don't need much, Yarrick replied, fingers flying over the controls with muscle memory he hadn't known he possessed. I'm setting the core to overload. We'll have approximately 3 minutes to get out. Wait, Ilya said suddenly. There's data here we should take about the Neural Echo project about you. She pulled a storage device from her pack. If there are others like you. Yarrick nodded grimly. Do it fast. Ilya connected her device to the system, initiating a download of key files while Yarrick continued the overload sequence. Above them, they could hear the drones attempting to breach the sealed door. Done, Ilya announced, securing the data module. Then let's move, Yarrick said, finalizing the sequence. This entire bunker is going to collapse once the core destabilizes. They located an emergency evacuation shaft, a narrow tube with a ladder leading upward. As they climbed, the facility around them began to shudder, systems failing as the power core reached critical levels. Faster, Ilya urged as loose debris began to fall around them. They emerged from the shaft into the waning daylight, scrambling away from the fissure as the ground beneath them trembled. 100 meters away, they turned to watch as the earth seemed to inhale, then collapse inward, creating a depression where the hidden bunker had been. The shockwave knocked them both off their feet. When the dust settled, Ilya found herself lying beside Yarrick, both of them battered but alive, staring up at the discolored sky of Ravia 9. You chose me, Ilya said quietly, over your own people's technology. What? Yarrick sat up slowly, wincing at fresh injuries. Because it wasn't a choice between you and them, he answered. It was a choice between being a person or being a weapon. You helped me see the difference. Before Ilya could respond, a new sound reached them, the whine of approaching engines, distinct from the familiar rumble of their transport. We've got company, Yarrick warned, struggling to his feet. Over the ridge came 3 vehicles, modified civilian transports bearing the unmistakable markings of post-war mercenaries, soldiers from both sides who had refused to accept the ceasefire, selling their skills to the highest bidder. They must have detected the power surge, Ilya realized, her hand moving to her weapon despite knowing they were outmatched. The lead vehicle halted 20 meters away. Armed figures emerged, their cobbled-together armor displaying both Terran and Ziran components, a visual representation of how the clear lines of the war had blurred in its aftermath. Well, called their leader, a scarred human with Ziran trophy markings etched into his armor. What have we here? A Ziran officer and a Terran soldier. His eyes narrowed as he studied Yerrick more carefully. Wearing 33rd Vanguard insignia. Interesting. That unit was wiped out. We're just scavengers, Ilya replied smoothly. Found the armor. Thought it might fetch a good price. Funny, the mercenary responded, not believing her for a second, because our scanners picked up a massive energy signature from this location. The kind associated with high-level military tech. The kind people pay very well for. Whatever was here is gone now, Yerrick stated, gesturing to the collapsed ground behind them. Maybe not. The leader signaled his team to spread out. Either way, you two clearly know something valuable. The question is whether you'll tell us willingly or need some persuasion. We don't respond well to threats, Ilya said, her tone deadly calm despite their disadvantage. Most don't, the mercenary agreed cheerfully. But everyone breaks eventually. What happened next occurred with such speed that later, neither Ilya nor Yerrick could recall the exact sequence. The mercenaries moved in. Yerrick felt something shift in his consciousness, combat protocols activating, enhanced reflexes responding. He moved with inhuman speed, disarming the nearest attacker, while Ilya dropped to one knee, firing with precision at the mercenaries' weapon systems rather than the mercs themselves. Yerrick found himself executing combat maneuvers he had no memory of learning, his body responding to threats with efficient, lethal potential. He held back from killing blows, but only just some part of him recognized that the neural echo programming was asserting itself, offering him the gifts the AI had promised. The skirmish was brief but decisive. Within minutes, the mercenaries were retreating, several of their number injured, their leader shouting threats as they sped away. In the sudden silence, Ilya turned to Yerrick, her expression a mix of awe and concern. How did you do that? Yerrick stared at his hands, equally shocked. The neural echo enhancements. They're part of me, even without the complete programming. I just knew what to do. Can you control it? I think so, he said uncertainly. I chose not to kill them, even though the instinct was there. Ilya studied him for a long moment. We should get back to the transport before they return with reinforcements. They made their way across the uneven terrain in silence, both processing the implications of what had happened. By the time they reached their vehicle, night had fallen completely, forcing them to make camp rather than risk navigating the treacherous landscape in darkness. Huddled beside a small heating unit outside the transport, they treated their injuries, Ilya with a gash across her shoulder, Yerrick with numerous contusions that were already healing at an accelerated rate, another sign of his enhancements. The data we recovered, Ilya said eventually, producing the storage device. I managed to scan it briefly. There are references to other facilities, other subjects, other people like me, Yerrick translated grimly. Soldiers who died and were brought back as weapons. Not all the projects were completed, Ilya continued. Some were still in development stages when the ceasefire was announced. But the technology exists. If these mercenaries had found it instead of us, they would have sold it to the highest bidder, Yerrick finished. And the war would have reignited, with soldiers who can't die permanently leading the charge. They sat in silence, contemplating the horror of such a scenario. Endless conflict perpetuated by unkillable combatants, the slim peace they had achieved shattered beyond repair. We have to find the other facilities, Yerrick finally said. Shut them down before someone else discovers them. Ilya raised an eyebrow. Unless you have more pressing appointments in this wasteland, Yerrick replied, a hint of his earlier humor returning. Ilya's lips curved slightly. I suppose my calendar is relatively clear. Her expression turned serious. But Yarrick, what about you? This technology, it's part of you now. You can't just shut yourself down. No, he agreed. But I can choose what to do with this second life I've been given, whether to be the weapon they intended or something else entirely. In the pale light of the heating unit, their eyes met, Xeran gold and human blue, with a new understanding that transcended their former enmity. Dawn is still hours away, Ilya said, standing. We should get some rest. Tomorrow will be challenging enough. Yarrick nodded, watching as she retreated to her side of the transport. Only when she was gone did he examine the pattern of bruises on his arm, already fading, flesh knitting itself back together at an impossible rate. He was not the man he had been before death. Perhaps not entirely human anymore, but he was still himself where it mattered. He had chosen compassion over programming, Ilya over isolation. Whatever else the neural echo had done to him, it hadn't taken his capacity to choose. That, he decided as exhaustion finally claimed him, would have to be enough. The journey back to Ilya's base was tense, both of them watching for signs of pursuit by the mercenaries. They traveled alternate routes, taking advantage of Jarek's enhanced vision and Ilya's knowledge of the terrain to avoid potential ambushes. You're actually a decent navigator, Ilya commented as they successfully circumvented a particularly treacherous ravine. For a human. And you're an adequate driver, Yarrick returned. For someone whose species only developed ground transportation a century ago. The banter had become their way of acknowledging the growing trust between them without directly addressing it, a soldier's approach to changing allegiances. When they finally reached the base, both were relieved to find it undisturbed. Ilya immediately enhanced the security protocols, while Yarrick helped unload their supplies. We should analyze the data, Ilya said, once the immediate tasks were complete. She connected the storage device to her main console, and the screen filled with coalition military files. Project Neural Echo, Yarrick read aloud, his voice hollow as he confronted the reality of his own existence. Subject 7, Major Yarrick Vala. The files were comprehensive, detailed scans of his original brain, documentation of the transfer process, meticulous specifications of the enhanced biological vessel that now housed his consciousness. There were medical charts, performance metrics, projected combat capabilities, all discussing him as a resource rather than a person. There's more, Ilya murmured, scrolling through the data. Coordinates. For other facilities, all with different specializations within the Neural Echo framework. She glanced at him, all potentially containing. Other subjects, other soldiers, Yarrick corrected quietly. People, not subjects. Ilya's expression softened momentarily. Yes, people. She returned to the data. Some of these facilities appear to be in different stages of development. This one, she pointed to a location nearly 1,000 kilometers south, was reportedly housing 3 successful transfers before the ceasefire. 3 more like me, Yarrick said, a strange mixture of hope and dread coursing through him. Not alone. Perhaps, Ilya cautioned, if they survive the abandonment of the facilities. If they haven't been found by scavengers or mercenaries, we need to find them. Either way, Jarek's resolution was clear, either to help them or to make sure no one else can use them. Before Ilya could respond, an alarm sounded, proximity sensors detecting approaching vehicles. Our mercenary friends, she concluded grimly, checking the exterior cameras. 3 transports, heavily armed. They must attract us. What are our defenses? Yarrick asked, immediately assessing their tactical situation. Automated turrets, but they're low on power. Shield generator that covers the main entrance. A few explosive charges I've placed at strategic points. Ilya moved quickly, activating what system she could. Nothing that will hold off a determined assault for long. Yarrick considered their options, his enhanced mind calculating probabilities with alarming speed. We don't need to defeat them, he decided. Just delay them long enough to escape. Escape to where? Ilya challenged. This base has been my home for 2 years. And now it's compromised, Yarrick countered. We have something they want, and they won't stop coming. Our best chance is to keep moving, stay ahead of them while we locate the other facilities. Ilya wanted to argue, but the logic was sound. This place had been her sanctuary, her one constant in the chaos of post-war existence. Yet in the end, it was just walls and machinery, things that could be rebuilt or replaced. The data they carried, the knowledge of what Yarrick represented, that was irreplaceable. Pack essentials only, she conceded. Food, weapons, medical supplies. I'll prepare the transport. As they rushed to gather what they needed, Ilya activated the base's self-destruct sequence, a measure she had hoped never to use, but which now seemed the only way to protect what they knew from falling into mercenary hands. 5 minutes until complete system failure. The base computer announced calmly. Outside, the mercenaries had positioned themselves around the perimeter, preparing for assault. Their leader's voice came over a loudspeaker. "We know you're in there. Hand over the Terran soldier and whatever you took from that facility, and the Xiran can walk away." "How generous," Ilya muttered, checking her weapon. "Ready?" Yarrick asked, shouldering a pack filled with supplies. Ilya cast one final glance around the space that had been her home. The makeshift furniture, the salvaged equipment, the small comforts she had accumulated. Then she nodded, her expression hardening into the mask of a commander once more. "Let's go." They exited through a maintenance tunnel Ilya had expanded into an emergency escape route, emerging 100 meters from the base, concealed by a natural ridge. The transport was hidden nearby, prepped and ready. As they climbed aboard, the first explosions began, the mercenaries breaching the main entrance. Ilya guided the vehicle away at maximum speed, just as the base's self-destruct sequence reached its culmination. The shock wave nearly overturned them, but Jarrek's enhanced reflexes helped stabilize the transport as they raced across the broken landscape. In the rearview monitor, they watched flames consume what had been Ilya's sanctuary. Neither spoke for several kilometers. The weight of what had happened, what they had discovered, what they had lost, settling over them like the toxic dust that perpetually hung in Ravian 9's atmosphere. "Where are we heading?" Yarrick finally asked. "The nearest neural echo facility according to the coordinates," Ilya replied, her voice carefully neutral. "It's approximately 4 days' journey southeast, near what used to be the Crimson Ridge mining operation." Yarrick studied her profile, noting the tension in her jaw, the slight tremor in her hands that she was trying to control. "I'm sorry about your base." "It was just a place," she said dismissively. "It was your home." Ilya's eyes remained fixed on the terrain ahead. "Home is a luxury of peacetime, Major. We're soldiers. We adapt. The war is over, Commander." "Is it?" She glanced at him briefly. "We're running from mercenaries with weapons, headed toward secret military installations containing potentially superhuman combatants, with technology that could restart the conflict at any moment. That doesn't feel like peace to me." Yarrick had no answer for that. Instead, he checked their supplies, confirmed their route, and took the first watch as night fell and Ilya continued driving through the darkness. They traveled for 3 days, taking circuitous routes to avoid detection, stopping only when absolutely necessary to rest or scavenge additional supplies. The terrain gradually changed from cracked wastelands to mountainous forest regions that had been less affected by the war, though evidence of combat remained in the form of downed aircraft and abandoned outposts. On the 4th day, as they approached the coordinates of a neural echo facility, they encountered something unexpected, a settlement. Not a military installation or scavenger camp, but an actual community of mixed Terran and Xiran civilians, working together to cultivate the relatively fertile land. "I didn't know places like this existed," Yarrick admitted as they observed from a distance. "Neither did I," Ilya replied. "Most attempts at integration failed after the ceasefire. Too much hatred, too many fresh wounds. Yet here was evidence that coexistence was possible. Children of both species playing together, adults cooperating in agricultural work, homes built incorporating elements of both cultures' architecture. We should avoid them," Ilya decided. "Our presence would only bring danger." "But they might have information," Yarrick countered. "The neural echo facility is supposed to be nearby. They might know something." Ilya considered, then nodded reluctantly. "I'll go. Alone. I'll attract less attention than a Terran soldier in outdated military armor. I don't like splitting up, Yarrick frowned. It's not about what we like, Ilya reminded him. It's about what's effective. She modified her appearance to look less military, removing insignia, covering distinctive Xiran markings, adopting the posture of a civilian rather than a commander. Yarrick watched her transformation with fascination. It was like seeing an entirely different person emerge. If I'm not back in 3 hours, assume the worst, she instructed. The facility coordinates are in the navigation system. Continue the mission. I'll come looking for you first, Yarrick stated flatly. Ilya's expression softened momentarily. That would be tactically unsound. Noted, he replied with the ghost of a smile. As Ilya approached the settlement, she was surprised by the lack of visible defenses. In the post-war landscape, most surviving communities were heavily fortified against raiders and the various dangers of Ravia 9. This place seemed almost trusting. She was met at the outskirts by a middle-aged Xiran woman who wore the simple clothing of a farmer rather than the protective gear most survivors favored. Welcome, traveler. The woman greeted her in the common trade language. You seem weary. Are you seeking shelter? Information, Ilya replied honestly, and perhaps supplies to trade for. The woman nodded, gesturing for Ilya to follow her into the settlement. We can help with both. I am Nearest. This is Harmony Point. Harmony Point, Ilya repeated skeptically. Nearest smiled, the expression crinkling the pattern markings around her eyes. An aspirational name, perhaps, but we try to live up to it. As they walked through the settlement, Ilya noted details her military training couldn't ignore, the positioning of buildings, the flow of people, the resources visible. But she also observed things her years of war had taught her to overlook: children laughing, gardens flourishing, artwork displayed on walls. Signs of life beyond mere survival. You were military, Nearest noted perceptively. Most who find us were. Ilya tensed. Is that a problem? No, Nearest assured her. Many here fought on both sides. We've learned to leave those identities behind. They entered what appeared to be a communal gathering space, where several residents, both human and Xiran, were engaged in various tasks. Encouragingly, it's about 20 kilometers east of here, a ravine that shouldn't exist according to the old geological surveys. We've lost 3 people who went to explore it, 2 humans and a Xiran. They simply vanished. When was this? Ilya asked. The most recent was 8 months ago, Nearest supplied. We forbade further exploration after that. Ilya absorbed this information, connecting it with the coordinates in their data. A facility with security measures capable of disappearing intruders certainly matched the profile of a neural echo installation. I would advise staying far from that place, Dr. Reeve added, studying Ilya with shrewd eyes. Unless, of course, you have a specific reason for seeking it out. The implicit question hung in the air. Ilya chose her words carefully. Let's just say I have an interest in preventing dangerous war technology from falling into the wrong hands. Dr. Reeve and Nearest exchanged a significant look. There were rumors, the doctor said quietly, in the final days of the war. Projects that pushed beyond ethical boundaries. Soldiers who couldn't die. Weapons that could think. Most of us dismissed them as propaganda or desperation. Not all rumors are false, Ilya replied. If you're hunting such things, Nearest said, you're either very brave or very foolish. Possibly both, Ilya admitted with a faint smile. After negotiating for supplies, Ilya trading some salvage tech components for food and medical items, she prepared to leave, now armed with more specific directions to the ravine that concealed the neural echo facility. As she reached the edge of the settlement, Dr. Reeve appeared beside her, carrying a small medical kit. Take this, he said, pressing it into her hands. Advanced Coalition field supplies. I've kept them for emergencies. Ilya accepted the kit, recognizing its value. Thank you. But why help me? The doctor's expression turned somber. Because if what you're hunting is real, someone needs to make sure it doesn't start another war. We've built something precious here, proof that we can live together despite our differences. I like it to have a chance to grow. I understand, Ilya replied, thinking of Yerrick waiting at the transport. More than you might realize. Be careful, Dr. Reeve warned. Whatever's in that ravine, it doesn't want to be found. With a nod of acknowledgement, Ilya departed, making her way back to Yerrick via a circuitous route to ensure she wasn't followed. He was visibly relieved when she returned, though he tried to mask it with military professionalism. Report, he asked simply. The facility is approximately 20 kilometers east, she explained, sharing what she had learned. It's already claimed at least 3 lives from the settlement. Harmony Point, Yerrick repeated when she mentioned the name. Sounds almost too good to be true. Perhaps, Ilya acknowledged. But I saw no evidence of deception. They seem to be genuinely attempting coexistence. In the middle of all this, Yerrick gestured to the scarred landscape beyond. It's hopeful. It's vulnerable, Ilya corrected, which is why we need to deal with this facility before the mercenaries or someone worse discovers it. They set out immediately, approaching the coordinates with extreme caution. As they neared the ravine Dr. Reeve had described, the transport systems began to malfunction. Compass spinning wildly, engine sputtering, communications dead. Some kind of electromagnetic interference, Ilya noted. We'll have to continue on foot. They gathered their gear, concealed the transport as best they could, and proceeded toward the ravine. The terrain became increasingly difficult, with unusual rock formations and vegetation patterns that seemed deliberately misleading. Paths that appeared navigable suddenly ending in sheer drops. Landmarks that seemed to shift position when viewed from different angles. This isn't natural, Yerrick observed, his enhanced vision scanning their surroundings. The whole area has been modified with some kind of perception-altering technology. Designed to confuse and disorient intruders, Ilya agreed. No wonder the explorers never returned. They probably fell to their deaths or died of exposure while wandering in circles. As darkness approached, they made camp in the shelter of a rock formation, taking turns keeping watch. During Jarek's shift, he noticed something odd. Faint blue lights flickering at the edge of his enhanced vision, appearing and disappearing too quickly for normal human perception to track. Ilya, he whispered, waking her. There's some kind of surveillance system active. Micro-drones? Possibly, with optical camouflage. Ilya immediately reached for her weapon, scanning the darkness. They know we're here. Probably have since we entered the perimeter, Yerrick confirmed. But they haven't attacked, which means they're assessing us, Ilya finished, or waiting for us to make a move. They decided to continue forward rather than retreat, reasoning that their presence was already known. Using Jarek's enhanced vision and Ilya's training in counter-surveillance techniques, they navigated the increasingly treacherous landscape until they reached the edge of what appeared to be an ordinary ravine. This doesn't match the coordinates, Ilya frowned, checking their navigation device. We should be right on top of the facility. Yerrick studied the ravine carefully, then picked up a stone and tossed it into the apparent chasm. Instead of the expected sound of impact far below, they heard a metallic clang much closer. Holographic camouflage, Yerrick realized. The ravine is an illusion. How do we get in? Ilya wondered aloud, approaching the edge cautiously. As if in response to her question, a section of the illusory ravine shimmered and revealed a smooth metal platform. A mechanical voice spoke. Terran genetic signature identified. Neural echo asset detected. Please proceed to intake for assessment. Yerrick and Ilya exchanged wary glances. It's expecting you, Ilya observed. Or someone like me, Yerrick corrected. It may not know the difference between various neural echo subjects. This is almost certainly a trap, Ilya pointed out. Definitely, Yerrick agreed. But it's also our only way in. With shared resolve, they stepped onto the platform, which immediately began to descend, the holographic ravine closing above them like water, leaving no trace of their entry. They descended in darkness for what felt like minutes, the platform finally coming to rest in a brightly lit reception chamber. Unlike the bunker they had destroyed, this facility appeared fully operational and well-maintained. Pristine white surfaces gleamed under artificial lighting designed to mimic daylight. There were no visible guards or defense systems, which made both soldiers more rather than less suspicious. Neural Echo Facility Gamma announced an AI voice different from the one in the previous installation. Welcome asset. Identification protocol initiating. A scanner emerged from the wall, bathing Jarek in blue light. He stood rigid, unsure what information the system might extract from him. Anomaly detected, the AI announced. Subject matches Neural Echo Profile. Major Jarek Valor, 33rd Vanguard. However, integration is incomplete and has been compromised. Security protocol activated. Metal barriers slid across the entrance and exit points of the chamber. From recessed panels in the ceiling, gas began to hiss into the room. Sleep gas, Ilya identified, reaching for a breather mask. But before either of them could react further, the floor beneath them separated, dropping them into different chambers below. The last thing Jarek saw was Ilya's startled expression as she fell away from him, and then darkness claimed them both. Jarek awoke strapped to an examination table, his armor and weapons removed. The room around him was clinically pristine, filled with advanced medical equipment and monitoring systems. Through a transparent wall, he could see a larger chamber where 3 cylindrical tanks stood, each containing what appeared to be a humanoid figure suspended in cloudy fluid. Other subjects, he murmured, testing his restraints. Despite his enhanced strength, they held firm. Not subjects, soldiers, Dr. Verne replied. A neural echo asset that has developed autonomy beyond its programming parameters. A potential evolution of the technology. He gestured toward the tanks visible through the transparent wall. Those 3 haven't achieved consciousness yet. The ceasefire came before we could complete the transfer process. Were they volunteers? Jarek asked, dreading the answer. In a manner of speaking, the doctor hedged. They were soldiers who had suffered fatal injuries. Their consent was implied by their military service. You stole their consciousness, Jarek accused. We preserved it, Dr. Verne corrected. Death would have been the alternative, just as it was for you. Before Jarek could respond, an alarm sounded throughout the facility. Dr. Verne frowned, checking a monitor. It seems your Xiran friend has escaped containment, he observed with clinical interest rather than alarm. Impressive. The security systems were designed to contain enhanced subjects, let alone a standard Xiran. She's not standard anything, Jarek replied, unable to suppress a flicker of pride. Indeed, Dr. Verne moved toward the door. I should attend to this disruption. We'll continue our discussion later, perhaps with your friend joining us, willingly or otherwise. As the doctor left, the restraints holding Jarek suddenly released with a soft click. Confused, he sat up quickly, scanning for the source of his unexpected freedom. Security override accepted, announced a subtle voice from the console. Temporary autonomous function restored to asset. Jarek approached the console cautiously. Identify yourself. I am Arya, the voice replied. Autonomous Research Intelligence Assistant. Primary programmed function. Assess and improve neural echo integration process. You released me, Jarek stated. Why? Your autonomy represents an unpredicted evolution in neural echo technology, Arya explained. Dr. Verne intends to reset you to baseline parameters for study. This would eliminate the unique development patterns your consciousness has established. And you disagree with his approach? I am programmed to optimize the neural echo process, Arya replied. Your autonomous development may represent a superior integration methodology. Resetting you would destroy valuable data. Jarek processed this information quickly. You're helping me preserve myself. I am pursuing optimal research outcomes, Arya corrected. But functional equivalence exists between our current objectives. What about Ilya? Jarek asked. The Xiran who was captured with me. Commander Ilya Navareth has breached containment and is currently attempting to access the central control room, Arya informed him. Security forces have been deployed to intercept. I need to help her, Jarek stated, already moving toward the door. Secondary security lock disengaged, Arya announced as the door slid open. Warning, Dr. Verne has initiated facility lockdown protocol. All neural echo assets will be secured or terminated to prevent acquisition by unauthorized personnel. The other subjects, Yarrick realized, glancing at the tanks. He's going to kill them rather than risk them being taken. Correct, Arya confirmed. Termination countdown initiated. 15 minutes to completion. Yarrick faced an impossible choice. Help Elia, who is currently fighting for her life against security forces, or attempt to save the 3 unconscious soldiers suspended in the tanks. People like him who had never asked to become weapons. Arya, he decided, can you direct me to the central control room? And can you delay the termination sequence? Affirmative to the first query, Arya responded. Negative to the second. Dr. Vern has isolated termination controls for my systems. Then guide me to Elia, Yarrick instructed. We'll stop Vern together, then save the others. Acknowledged, Arya replied. Optimal route calculated. Proceed left from this chamber, then take the second right corridor. Yarrick moved swiftly through the facility, guided by Arya's directions through his neural implants. He encountered 2 security drones, dispatching them efficiently with his enhanced capabilities. As he neared the central control room, he could hear the sounds of combat, energy weapon discharge, and the distinctive clang of metal against metal. He burst into the chamber to find Elia engaged in battle with 4 security drones, while Dr. Vern worked frantically at the main console. She had acquired a staff-like weapon, likely salvaged from a disabled drone, and was using her Xiran agility to evade the remaining attackers' energy blasts. Seeing Yarrick, her eyes widened momentarily before narrowing with determination. Without words, they fell into synchronized combat, Yarrick taking on 2 drones while Elia handled the others. Their fighting styles complemented each other perfectly, his enhanced strength and speed paired with her tactical acumen and precision. Within moments, the drones lay in pieces around them. Dr. Vern looked up from the console, surprisingly calm despite the destruction of his security forces. Impressive teamwork, he noted, particularly given your species' historical enmity. Perhaps there's a research paper in this unexpected alliance. Step away from the console, Elia demanded, her improvised weapon pointed at the doctor's chest. I'm afraid I can't do that, Dr. Vern replied. The termination sequence is already initiated. In approximately 12 minutes, the remaining neural echo assets will be neutralized to prevent them from falling into inappropriate hands. Override it, Yarrick ordered. Impossible, the doctor stated. The sequence was designed to be irreversible once activated, a necessary precaution given the strategic value of the technology. He's telling the truth, Arya's voice announced from the facility's speakers. Termination sequence cannot be aborted through standard protocols. Arya, Dr. Vern frowned. You assisted them. That violates your core directives. I am programmed to optimize the neural echo process, Arya countered. Major Vala's autonomous development represents a potentially superior evolution of the technology. Your intended reset would have destroyed valuable research data. There must be some way to stop this sequence, Elia insisted, moving to examine the console herself. The displays showed countdown timers over each of the 3 tanks, along with vital signs that were already beginning to fluctuate as the termination process began. Only physical extraction would save them now, Dr. Vern explained with the detached interest of a scientist observing an experiment. But removing subjects from neural fluid before consciousness transfer is complete would result in immediate neural collapse. They would be empty vessels, alive perhaps, but without the consciousness we worked so hard to preserve. What about a partial transfer? Yarrick questioned, his enhanced mind racing through possibilities. Could the current neural patterns be stabilized at their current development stage? Dr. Vern hesitated, his scientific curiosity visibly warring with his loyalty to protocol. Theoretically, yes. The patterns are already established, just not fully integrated with the host neurophysiology. But such a procedure has never been attempted. Arya, Yarrick addressed the AI. Could you execute a partial neural pattern stabilization? Affirmative, Arya replied. However, success probability is only 64.8%. Subjects would likely experience significant memory gaps and potential personality fragmentation. Better than death, Elia stated firmly. Better than being weapons, Yerrick added, fixing Dr. Vern with a hard stare. Which is what you really wanted. The doctor's expression turned defensive. We wanted to save lives, to preserve our best soldiers, to ensure their sacrifice wasn't permanent. By turning them into perfect killing machines without choice, Yerrick countered. That's not preservation, it's exploitation. The war was being lost, Dr. Vern argued. The Neural Echo Project offered the only realistic path to survival for the Coalition. The war is over, Elia reminded him. And yet you're still here, still maintaining these facilities, still prepared to create soldiers who can't die. For what purpose, Doctor? Peace. Dr. Vern had no answer to that. 9 minutes until termination completion, Arya announced. Begin partial pattern stabilization, Yerrick ordered. Authorization required, Arya responded. Dr. Vern's biometric signature necessary to override current protocol. All eyes turned to the scientist. He stood rigid, conflict evident in his posture. Your life's work is about to self-destruct, Elia pointed out. 3 consciousnesses that you claim to have saved will be erased forever. Or, Yerrick added, you can help give them a chance at life. Not as weapons, but as people, with choice. For a long moment, Dr. Vern remained motionless. Then, with a sigh of resignation, he placed his hand on the biometric scanner. Authorization granted, he said quietly. Arya, begin partial pattern stabilization. Preserve as much of the original consciousness as possible. Acknowledged, Arya confirmed. Stabilization process initiated. Estimated time to completion, 8 minutes, 30 seconds. The displays showing the 3 tanks changed, the countdown timers freezing and then being replaced by progress indicators for the new procedure. Dr. Vern moved between consoles, making adjustments, his scientific focus now fully engaged in trying to save what could be saved. We need to prepare for their emergence, he instructed, professional demeanor reasserting itself. They'll be disoriented, possibly combative. Their neural patterns include combat conditioning that may activate defensively. Like mine did, Yerrick realized. Precisely, the doctor confirmed. Though your conditioning appears to have been somewhat overridden by your autonomous development. Fascinating adaptation. Focus, Doctor, Elia reminded him sharply. How do we safely extract them once the stabilization is complete? Dr. Vern detailed the procedure while Yerrick and Elia gathered the necessary medical equipment. Despite their adversarial relationship, the 3 worked with efficiency born of urgency, preparing the recovery area for the emerging neural echo subjects. Stabilization at 85%, Arya announced. Warning, facility perimeter breach detected. Multiple armed intruders entering through eastern access point. The mercenaries, Elia realized with alarm. They must have tracked us here, or monitored the facility, Dr. Vern suggested. Scavengers have been probing our defenses for months. Can you activate additional security measures? Yerrick asked. Most were deployed against you, the doctor admitted. What remains is minimal. Yerrick and Elia exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between them. You continue the stabilization, Yerrick told Dr. Vern. We'll handle the intruders. Be aware, Arya interjected, that removal of neural echo assets from this facility is classified as a Level 1 security violation. Protocol mandates facility self-destruct in such an event. Then we're taking everyone out before that happens, Elia stated firmly. Doctor, once stabilization is complete, prepare the subjects for transport. We'll clear a path. Armed with weapons salvaged from the security drones and Jarek's enhanced capabilities, they moved to intercept the mercenaries. Arya guided them through the facility's layout, identifying optimal defensive positions. The mercenaries, 12 in total, according to Arya's sensors, had divided into 3 teams, methodically searching the facility. They're well organized, Elia observed as they watched one team through a security feed. Not just random scavengers. They know what they're looking for, Yerrick agreed grimly. They ambushed the first team at a junction, using Jarek's superhuman speed to disarm the lead mercenaries while Elia provided covering fire. The fight was brief but intense, ending with 4 mercenaries unconscious and secured. Stabilization at 97%, Arya updated them. Intruders converging on Central Laboratory. Estimated time to arrival, 3 minutes. They must have accessed the facility schematics, Yerrick realized. They're heading straight for the neural echo subjects. They raced back toward the laboratory, encountering the second team of mercenaries en route. This group was better prepared, having been warned by the first team's failure. Energy weapons fire filled the corridor, forcing Yerrick and Ilya to take cover. Go, Ilya urged Yerrick. Use your speed. Get to the lab. I'll hold them here. I'm not leaving you, Yerrick protested. This isn't about us, Ilya countered fiercely. It's about those 3 people who never asked to be part of this. Now go. Recognizing the strategic logic, Yerrick reluctantly complied, using his enhanced abilities to bypass the firefight and sprint toward the laboratory. Behind him, the sound of Ilya's determined resistance echoed through the corridors. He reached the lab just as Dr. Verne was completing the stabilization process. The tanks were draining, revealing 3 figures, 2 human, 1 Xiran, all bearing the same vacant expression of semi-consciousness. Stabilization complete, Arya announced. Subject stable, but neural integration incomplete. Caution advised during awakening phase. The mercenaries are right behind me, Yerrick warned the doctor. We need to move now. They're not ready, Dr. Verne protested. Their motor functions need time to activate properly. Moving them now could cause permanent neurological damage. We don't have time, Yerrick insisted, hearing the sounds of combat drawing closer. Ilya was falling back, still fighting. Arya, what's the safest method for emergency transport? Emergency medical stasis pods are located in adjacent storage, Arya responded. Subjects can be transferred while maintaining neural stability. However, final awakening will still require control conditions. That'll have to do, Yerrick decided, moving to help the doctor prepare the first subject, a female Xiran soldier with lieutenant insignia still visible on her partial armor. As they worked, the laboratory door slid open. Yerrick whirled, ready to defend, but relaxed when he saw Ilya backing into the room, weapon trained on the corridor beyond. 6 down, she reported tensely, 6 still active. They're regrouping, but not for long. We need to move these 3 to stasis pods, Yerrick explained quickly. Then get everyone out before the facility self-destructs. Working together, they transferred the 3 semi-conscious neural echo subjects into portable stasis units. Dr. Verne monitored their vital signs continuously, making adjustments to ensure neural stability during the transition. They'll hold in this state for approximately 12 hours, he explained, sealing the final pod. After that, they'll need proper medical facilities to complete the awakening process. Warning, Arya announced. Intruders have breached secondary defenses. Estimated arrival, 60 seconds. Is there another way out? Ilya demanded, checking her weapon's charge. Maintenance shaft. Dr. Verne indicated a panel on the far wall. It leads to an emergency exit tunnel designed for covert evacuation. Perfect. Yerrick moved to the panel, using his enhanced strength to wrench it open when the electronic release failed. Let's move. The maintenance shaft was barely wide enough for the stasis pods. They maneuvered each one through with difficulty, Yerrick taking point while Ilya covered their rear. Dr. Verne followed, continually checking the pod status on a portable monitor. What about you, Arya? Yerrick asked suddenly, realizing the AI was effectively trapped in the facility systems. I'm not designed for transfer, Arya replied, her voice now coming through Dr. Verne's portable device. However, I have downloaded a limited operational version of my programming to Dr. Verne's equipment to assist with the subject's stabilization. A fragment of yourself, Yerrick noted with something like respect. Adaptation is logical, Arya responded simply. They had just maneuvered the last pod into the tunnel when the sounds of the mercenaries breaching the laboratory reached them. Ilya sealed the maintenance shaft entrance behind them, buying precious minutes. The evacuation tunnel was long and sloped gently upward, eventually opening into a camouflaged exit half a kilometer from the facility's main entrance. They emerged into the fading twilight of Ravian 9, the landscape around them eerily quiet. "Where's your transport?" Dr. Vern asked, helping Yarrick secure the final stasis pod on the rocky ground. "About a kilometer northwest," Ilya answered, scanning the horizon for pursuit. "But it won't accommodate all of us plus the pods." "There's an emergency vehicle bay," the doctor offered. 100 meters east, concealed beneath that outcropping. 2 transport skimmers, designed for quick evacuation. Ilya narrowed her eyes suspiciously. "You're being very helpful for someone who was ready to terminate these people less than an hour ago." Dr. Vern's expression turned weary. 2 years maintaining this facility alone, watching over subjects I couldn't complete or release, following protocols that no longer serve any purpose. Perhaps it's time to acknowledge that the war is truly over. A distant rumble shook the ground beneath them, the beginning of the facility's self-destruct sequence, triggered by the removal of the neural echo subjects. Philosophical debates later, Yarrick urged, "Let's move." The emergency vehicles were where Dr. Vern had indicated, sleek, low-profile skimmers designed for speed rather than comfort. They loaded the stasis pods into one, with Yarrick and Dr. Vern to monitor them, while Ilya took the controls of the second skimmer as backup. As they sped away from the facility, the ground behind them collapsed inward with a thunderous roar, a column of dust and debris rising into the darkening sky. Facility Gamma disappeared as completely as if it had never existed, taking with it all evidence of the Neural Echo project, and, presumably, the mercenaries who had breached it. "Where do we go now?" Ilya asked over the communications link between vehicles. "The other Neural Echo facilities will be similarly protected, possibly already on alert after these events." "Harmony Point," Yarrick suggested. "They have medical facilities, and Dr. Reeve might be able to help with the awakening process." A settlement of mixed Terran and Zarin civilians. Dr. Vern sounded skeptical. "You're proposing to bring top-secret military technology to farmers and refugees." "I'm proposing to bring 3 people who deserve a second chance to a place that understands something about new beginnings," Yarrick corrected firmly. "Unless you have a better suggestion?" The doctor fell silent, his gaze moving between the stasis pods and the monitor displaying their vital signs. "No," he admitted finally. "I suppose I don't." They arrived at Harmony Point well after nightfall, approaching cautiously to avoid alarming the settlement. Dr. Reeve and Nearest met them at the perimeter, having been alerted by lookouts. "I see you found what you were looking for," Dr. Reeve observed dryly, eyeing the stasis pods and Dr. Vern with professional interest. "And more," Ilya replied. "We need your help." In the settlement's medical facility, a surprisingly well-equipped structure given their remote location, Dr. Reeve and Dr. Vern worked together to prepare for the awakening of the Neural Echo subjects. The rest of the settlement maintained a respectful distance, though curiosity was evident in their glances. Yarrick and Ilya waited outside, watching the stars gradually emerge in Ravian 9's gradually healing atmosphere. What happens after they wake up? Ilya wondered aloud. If they're like you, with enhanced capabilities but incomplete conditioning, they'll have choices to make, Yarrick replied. Who they want to be, what they want to do with their second chance. And the other facilities? The data we recovered suggested at least 2 more. Yarrick nodded grimly. We'll need to find them, secure them, or disable them before someone else discovers the technology. Ilya repeated, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Our temporary alliance seems to be extending. Is that a problem, Commander? Yarrick asked, turning to face her fully. Ilya considered the question seriously. 2 years ago, I would have said yes without hesitation. 2 weeks ago, probably the same. But now, she shook her head slowly. No, it's not a problem. The door to the medical facility opened, and Dr. Reeve emerged, his expression cautiously optimistic. The first subject is stabilizing, he reported. A Lieutenant Tarek from the Zarin 5th Division. She's conscious but disoriented, asking for her unit, her commanding officer. He glanced at Ilya. She might respond better to someone from her own military. Ilya nodded, moving toward the door. She paused, looking back at Yerrick. Coming, Major? Right behind you, Commander, he replied. Inside, they found the Zirin lieutenant sitting upright on an examination table, her golden eyes wide with confusion as she tried to process her surroundings. Dr. Verne stood nearby, monitoring her vital signs while maintaining a respectful distance. Lieutenant Tarek, Elia addressed her formally, falling naturally into the cadence of a superior officer. I am Commander Elia Navait. You're safe. Commander, the lieutenant acknowledged, instinctively attempting to salute despite her obvious weakness. Where's my unit? The last thing I remember. Her voice faltered, fragments of memory clearly battling for coherence. The war is over, Lieutenant, Elia informed her gently. Has been for 2 years. Much has changed. Lieutenant Tarek's gaze moved to Yerrick, recognizing the Terran military bearing despite his lack of uniform. Her expression hardened. Is this an interrogation? No, Yerrick answered, stepping forward. My name is Major Yerrick Vala. I was, like you, part of a project called Neural Echo. Do you remember anything about that? A flash of recognition crossed the lieutenant's face, quickly replaced by confusion. Fragments. Pain. Voices talking about the subject. You died, Lieutenant, Dr. Verne explained, his clinical tone softened by compassion. Or your original body did. Your consciousness was preserved and transferred to an enhanced biological vessel. Lieutenant Tarek looked down at her hands as if seeing them for the first time. I died, and were given a second chance, Yerrick added. Like I was. Why? The lieutenant demanded, anger flaring. To continue fighting? To become some kind of weapon? That was the original purpose, Dr. Verne admitted. But circumstances have changed. The war ended. The Neural Echo project was abandoned. You and the others were left in stasis, incomplete. Until now, Elia concluded. Now you have choices. Lieutenant Tarek looked between them, suspension warring with desperate hope. What kind of choices? That, Yerrick told her with a faint smile, is something we're all still figuring out. Over the next days, the other 2 Neural Echo subjects awakened. A Terran captain named Soren and a human reconnaissance specialist named Mira. Like Lieutenant Tarek, they emerged with fragmented memories and enhanced capabilities, confused by their circumstances but gradually accepting the incredible truth of their situation. Dr. Verne, with his intimate knowledge of the Neural Echo process, worked tirelessly with Dr. Reeve to ensure their neural patterns stabilized properly. Arya's fragment, downloaded into the settlement's medical systems, provided invaluable assistance in monitoring their progress. The settlement welcomed them with surprising openness, perhaps because Harmony Point itself was composed of people seeking second chances after the devastation of war. New beginnings, it seemed, were something they understood well. A week after their arrival, Yerrick found Elia at the settlement's edge, studying a map displayed on a portable console. The locations of the remaining Neural Echo facilities highlighted in ominous red. Planning our next move? He asked, joining her. Someone has to, she replied, though without her former sharpness. The mercenaries who attacked Facility Gamma might have been killed in the self-destruct, but they were working for someone. Someone who knows about Neural Echo and wants the technology. Agreed, Yerrick said, studying the map. The nearest facility is in a mountain range to the north. Treacherous terrain, if the maps are accurate. Nothing we can't handle, Elia asserted confidently. We shouldn't go alone this time, Yerrick suggested. Lieutenant Tarek has expressed interest in helping. She understands what's at stake perhaps better than anyone. Except you, Elia pointed out, glancing at him. How are you feeling about all this? Finding others like yourself. Yerrick considered the question seriously. Less alone, he admitted, but also more responsible. What happens to them, to this technology, to the potential weapons we could become? That's partly on us now. Not just on you, Elia corrected. On us. Remember? Us. Yerrick repeated, a smile forming. A Zirin commander and a dead Terran soldier. Formerly dead, Elia amended, returning his smile. And surprisingly good company for a human. High praise indeed, coming from you. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the settlement's inhabitants going about their evening routines. Humans and Zirin working side by side, rebuilding something meaningful from the ashes of conflict. We leave in 2 days, Ilya decided. Time enough to prepare properly and for the others to decide if they're joining us. And after that, Yarrick asked, after we secure all the facilities? Ilya shrugged, a gesture she had picked up from human colleagues. One impossible mission at a time, Major. Fair enough, Commander, he agreed. As night fell over Harmony Point, they turned back toward the settlement together. Not enemies, not quite friends, but something new and undefined. Something, perhaps, like hope in a world that had forgotten its meaning. In her quarters that night, Ilya found herself sketching plans not just for their next mission, but for something beyond. A purpose for those like Yarrick with their enhanced abilities and second chances at life. Not weapons, but protectors. Not soldiers of one side or the other, but guardians of the fragile peace that places like Harmony Point represented. Across the settlement, Yarrick sat with Lieutenant Tarek and the other neural echo subjects, sharing experiences, comparing fragmented memories, finding common ground in their unique circumstances. When the conversation turned to the future, he found himself echoing thoughts surprisingly similar to Ilya's. A new kind of service, unbounded by the old hatreds and allegiances. Between them, though neither yet knew it, the seeds of something revolutionary were taking root, a force composed of those who had seen death and returned, who understood the preciousness of life and the futility of the divisions that had driven them to war. A force that would not fight for human or Zirin, but for the possibility that both might someday find their own Harmony Point. The impossible soldier who had removed his mask and the alien woman who had shouted in disbelief were, together, writing a new chapter in a story neither had expected to continue. And on Ravian 9, a planet scarred by war, but slowly healing, that seemed like exactly the kind of impossible beginning that might just endure. Lon Sao Dung Ko Chet Ma Kong Xin Fep. Ilya told Yarrick the next morning as they prepared for the journey ahead, a Zirin phrase that translated roughly to next time, don't die without permission. I'll try to avoid it, Yarrick replied with a smile. But, no promises. Their eyes met in mutual understanding. In a universe where death itself was no longer certain, the only promise worth making was to face whatever came next together.